Hey, everybody, welcome back to a morning of support for working family caregivers. Beth is going to help us figure out what's the plan for the family emergencies. So Beth, take it away.
Oops. Okay. So my mouse is a little weird here this morning, so bear with me. All right. For working caregivers, creating a family emergency plan. So these pictures of these people look like what I feel like when I have a family emergency at work. The hands go to the head. Your brain is just not in its normal state. And it's so compelling that you feel the need to put your hands up to your head to help manage what's going on in there. So you have to decide, what is the priority? We talked a lot about priorities today. And when you're in a crisis, it's hard to determine what priorities are. So just a little bit about me as we continue here. I was a caregiver for my father for 5 years through dementia, diabetes, cancer, and we kept him out of the hospital the entire last year of his life as we determined how to manage all this. And all of that time, I was working full time. And here's a little bit more about my background here. You can see. So you think, what comes first when you get the call? What is actually the first step you take? So when you're going to make a family emergency plan, which you want to do in advance, you really want to think it starts with the very first step. And if you kind of take the first step as a misstep, then you might kind of go awry and things kind of tumble and become worse. Where if you have already been through a family emergency, which I'm guessing everybody here has, you already have experienced this and you know what some of the missteps were. I certainly had a zillion. And of course, your job changes, your family situation changes, the emergency nature of it changes. But all of it is kind of this view of this little ball where, your world looked this way, but now you're looking through the world this way and everything is upside down. So kind of tuck that in the back of your mind. What's the first step? And we'll come back to that. So you want to prepare your colleagues in advance. That is one of the critical pieces of creating a plan at work. Oops. So the first thing my recommendation for the first thing is talking to your manager. So when you come to your manager and you say, I have a family emergency, your manager's brain also kind of goes like this. If you have a good manager, you're not going to actually see the hands on the head, but that's what they're doing mentally. So what you want to be able to provide is a plan where they don't have to feel that way, where you've addressed what your current workload is. You've let them know what's on your plate, what the status is of each of those things. And, I'm sort of coming at this from my corporate life job, but really the same is true whether you work in a restaurant or in retail or, wherever you may work. Your manager needs to know that your work's going to get done and how is that going to happen. So actually writing out how that's going to happen so that when you come and say, I have a family emergency, you've already had the talk, they have an understanding of the information, the type of information they're going to get. So you hand over and you kind of keep this at the ready, your status of what's going on, who's going to fill in for you, how these deadlines are going to be met, how they can reach you, and when you're going to loop back to them. So you also want to gain buy-in from your peers, and if you have a team of your own, people who report to you. So that's a similar but slightly different situation where with your peers, these are the people who are going to need to fill in when you're gone. So a great way to get buy-in from your peers is to say, hey, I have this family caregiving situation. This is going to happen again. This is what the type of thing I'm going to need. I would love to be able to reach out to you and have you be able to do this. And in return, I would offer this. So maybe you have a coworker who has childcare issues sometimes and has a childcare emergency where maybe you could help when that person is out due to an unexpected sick child. And you can say, when your child is sick, I know this happens to you. then I can fill in for you. But so that there's a little give and take. A workplace has to be give and take, especially when you're a caregiver. And agreeing with the manager, with your peers about how you're going to communicate your availability. And everyone has different communication preferences. You may know somebody who, will say, don't call me, just text me. You may have those who, will just really need to hear your voice and hear you tell them what's happening. And so you want to be aware of what those communication styles are. You want to ask your manager, if you have an HR department, about the federal, we talked about this earlier, the Family Medical Leave Act, the federal version for up to 12 weeks. If there are 50 or more employees, it varies. Every situation is a little bit specific. You don't have to take the leave all at once. That was something I didn't understand. I knew that such a thing existed at the federal level, and I was in New Jersey at the time, where now they have it. I'm in Massachusetts now, where now it exists at a state level, but I didn't know I could take potentially even half a day here or a day there. I thought I had to take it all at once. So that was a big piece of information to have. And when I went to HR, the HR representative said, I get this request like once a day. This is 15 years ago. This is how prevalent family caregiving was even back then. And people talk about it more now. Back then, I would never say anything to anybody unless I absolutely had to, because it would be perceived as weakness, not paying attention, all the things that we talked about. Keep a list of items. Actually write down a list of items that you need to take with you if you have to leave in a hurry. So when your brain, you've got this brain, you're not going to be able to think clearly through all those things. You'll grab your phone, but not your charger. And then you'll end up in a place with no phone and you can't communicate with anybody, and that doesn't work. So my recommendation, actual list, and have a bag to put your stuff in. I would have to bring my computer and, files potentially and all kinds of things. And if I didn't have something to carry them out to my car with, or public transportation or whatever, then I was stuck. So I like the idea of a bag with the list in it so that you know where that list is when you go to look for it, and you can, take your things with you and go. And at home, similar but different. Nothing stops. So to prepare in advance. So my motto is basically plan and prepare, or react and regret. As far as I can tell, those are pretty much the two choices when it comes to caregiving. So prepare your caree and others in your life for what's, say this has happened before, this is going to happen again, and I'd like us all to be prepared so that if you're talking to your caree, so that it's not as disruptive for you, more what to expect. And so ask about the priorities of the person receiving care and who they want to be involved. Do they want, 16 family members coming? And so that everybody's there all at the same time? Or do they want just, one person to come and manage things and let everybody else know what's what? And you want to gain commitment from the people in your household, people in your circle. You want to identify, as we saw at Carolyn's Wheel, who does what for whom, and what role do they play. And for me in particular, the big one was, who can I vent to? Because I could manage everything. It was fine. I'm just a person who manages things and what happens and who does what. And my big need was to just let it out to somebody who was a good listener and wasn't going to tell me you should and all those things. And I even had like 2 or 3 people who, if it was this type of venting, I would call this person. If it was that type of venting, I would, send a giant text to that person. So kind of have your, things lined up, know what you need. I knew I needed to vent, and then I was fine. Yeah, overwhelmed, but fine. And share the plan. When you make this plan, you definitely want to share the plan and provide updates along the way, because everything will change. Every family emergency is different. The timing is different. The location may be different. Who needs to be involved could be different. And have an ongoing communication strategy that everyone's aware of. I will, here's this centralized online system where we're going to post the information, or here's the family chat, here's who's in it, and here's what we're going to do. And, here's the secret family chat for the people who really need to know, only this information. And that person who never gets the story straight and gets involved when he shouldn't isn't in that chat. So, make it very clear who's communicating what, who's involved. And very often it's even more important to say who isn't involved, because that can really muddy the waters. So like at work, a go bag at home, one for you, one for your caree. You want to have all of your caree's insurance information, health history, list of doctors, medications, who prescribe them, what they're for, all ready to go in a bag, so that you just need to add the personal items like glasses, phone, charger, teeth, hearing aids, whatever personal thing may be of a comfort to them that they just aren't going to be happy without. Maybe it's their favorite hat. I mean, who knows? But so that you have a plan for what's going to go in there. And so you can say to your caree, here's the bag. Last time we learned that these were the things we needed. Here's the bag with all the things. We're off. We're going to go. And, everything we need is in there. Then everybody's organized. Did you want to jump in, Denise?
You know what? I just wanted to mention something, because I wish I would have done this, and that is the hearing aid container, because hearing aids get lost all the time in the hospital, in the ambulance. And I wish I would have thought, anytime we went to the hospital, to have my mom take her hearing aids out, put them in the box, and then put them back on when she got to the hospital. Even if the nice EMTs had to scream at her, we would have at least had both hearing aids. So thank you for this. This is really sparking an idea for me.
All right. It is critical. I actually have someone I care for regularly who does not have hearing aids, and the process of getting them replaced has been dragging. And this poor person is just living life for months without hearing aids. And it's the quality of life is night and day. So you also want to, again, make sure the things that aren't there, right? You don't want to bring valuables. You want to kind of have that discussion. Like my dad had, the watch, and he did not go anywhere without that watch. And I would have to explain to him that the watch is not going to the hospital because, God forbid, something happened, they had to take his watch off and it got misplaced, stolen, lost, thrown away by mistake. We would all be heartbroken. And so to have that kind of upfront, so you're not having the argument, bundling him into the ambulance saying, give me your watch. So, let everybody understand up front what's going to happen, what's not going to happen. So actually making a plan. You can see the family emergency plan that Denise created. I have a link here. I'll put it in the chat when I'm done here. And it's at the Caregiving Years Training Academy site. I'm not going to recreate the wheel. And you can use that plan to start your planning. And the beauty of a plan is, you do need the first step. And this is one of the more critical pieces. So again, it's the priorities. While you're doing your sort of lying there daydreaming thing, those priorities creep in. You can kind of think about it along the way and decide what the real priority is, depending on the circumstance. And maybe you just pick two. You're actually at work. What do you do? Who do you start with? What has to happen? Do you have maybe a little checklist in that little bag also of, okay, I have to email my boss and tell this person that, and go put this, piece of something over in this department, so that you are it's just like this. You don't have to think about it. So walking through the family emergency, where do you start? So if you're at work, you kind of start this way, because you're going to need to gather your things and leave. That's essentially the first thing you're going to do. Let people know you're leaving, gather your things, and leave. If you're at home, it's different. You have to handle whatever's in front of you. If there's somebody bleeding and needs an ambulance, that's the thing you're going to handle first. And then you're going to sort of mentally be thinking, okay, I'm going to have to notify work. How long do I have before I need to do that? Do I have a deadline today? Can I wait an hour? Do I need to call while we're in the ambulance on the way there because there's a deadline that's going to cost the company money, or there's going to be a unit full of patients and I'm not going to be the nurse on duty to take care of them, that's a separate issue. So kind of have your priorities in order, whether you're at home, at work, or sort of out in the world. What is the first step? How is this going to go? Who are you going to call? And I know you're all going to love this one. What can you delegate? Well, very often you can't delegate anything to anybody because there is no one. Sometimes you think you have a plan for delegating, and it turns out that the person who agreed to take on responsibilities, you had the discussion ahead of time, made your little plan, and you call or text that person at work or at home, and that person says, oh, as it turns out, I can't actually do that. And then, you're sort of lost, which brings us to number 4, which is I always like to have a plan B. So when somebody isn't going to fulfill the commitment they agreed to fulfill, that you do have, at least you've begun thinking about who can do what when, or what can slide to later, what has to be done now. And, make it coming to terms with, this is the phrase that I use, coming to terms with the fact that there are people who aren't going to be involved the way that you want them to, or even the way they've agreed to. And probably by now, it sounds like we've got experienced caregivers here who know who's going to actually be available and who isn't. But also that sort of new recruiting system of, well, actually, I could use help with this. And putting those things in place. So, you've got the plan of everyone has to be involved at work, everyone has to be involved at home, but then there are the little pieces of like, who's going to come over and feed the dog? Well, you might have a next door neighbor with a dog, and that next door neighbor loves your dog. And you could say ahead of time, hey, would you, if I have to go to the hospital with my mom, would I be able to call you? And, I'll put dog food out or give you key or whatever you need to do. Would you be willing to do that for a day or two, until I kind of get settled and see where I'm going to end up with all of this? So you kind of need to recruit your team. And what I like about having a plan is peace of mind. I am all about peace of mind. And it comes from knowing in advance what to do when the inevitable crisis strikes. You don't have to know all the details. You don't have to fill out a complete and detailed plan, but to have thought through some of the priorities, the first action you're going to take if you are here, or here when it happens, that alone will get you a long way. And writing it out ever the more helpful. So now I would love to hear thoughts if you want to unmute and kind of tell me, what does this spark thoughts, concerns? Do you have things that worked for you in the past, things that didn't work for you, suggestions that you think should be in every emergency plan, or kind of pitfalls to watch out for? I always like those too. Love to hear people's thoughts.
I'm thinking, why didn't I figure out that container for the hearing aids 10 years ago? It's those little things though, but if you don't take care of the hearing aids, for instance, or the eyeglasses, the replacement is a nightmare.
It's true. And the eyeglasses, again, with the case, because if you have somebody who only uses glasses for reading or maybe eating their lunch or whatever, then if you don't have the case, they're going to get scratched, ruined, lost more easily. And, so it just kind of thinking through, actually, what would it look like? What will it look like when my dad gets to the hospital? And, I was there as much as I physically possibly could be with my dad, but there were times when I would have to go to the stairwell and have my meetings with people tromping by me and the echoes. And he was there alone. And somebody could have come and taken him off for a test of some sort. And did he have his glasses? Did he need his glasses? Where were they? Did they get wrapped up in the bed sheets? Somebody came and changed the bedding while he was gone. So just thinking through all this, like, what does this actually look like and how can I mitigate? But anyway, thoughts.
Yeah, Sheila has a question. So go ahead and unmute, Sheila.
Sorry about that. I guess my mouse is trying to be like yours, Beth. It didn't want to unmute.
Yeah, yeah, mine is going crazy here. I don't know. I can't make it work right. But anyway, what's your question, Sheila?
I I'm not sure if it's a question or maybe a comment.
Sure.
Thank God I have not had um an incident where I've had to take my mom to the hospital. Um, and my mom is a bit uncooperative when it comes to trying to find out what she wants as far as care, or what she wants or what she doesn't want as far as
Mm-hmm.
care. So other than following your emergency plan and getting things into place in the event that something does occur and I have to get her to the hospital. So I will follow that and put those things into place, emergency bag and what she needs and what I need if this occurs. Is there anything else you would recommend as far as what I would need from her, or would I just have to make the decision? Say for instance, I don't even know if my mom would want or would not want a do not resuscitate order, because
Mm-hmm.
she will not respond to that question because she
So
doesn't think
what?
it's necessary.
Yeah, and I understand that, and that there's a lot that goes into that. There's fear, there are cultural, historical pieces, all those things. But one way to do that is to take it completely off her and say, you know what, Mom, I've been thinking through this sort of thing, and here's what I want. Here's my proxy document saying, my advanced care directive saying what I do and don't want for care. Here's my proxy document. Will you make these decisions for me in the case that I'm unable to communicate them? And you'll get a response. And that will tell you, even if she doesn't tell you at all what she wants or doesn't want, you'll see from her response what some of what her feelings are about that.
Okay.
You can also take what you know of her. What has she ever said when somebody else was in an emergency or died, or there was, care decisions involved? What was her reaction to that? Oh, I can't believe they didn't do everything. Mental note, Mom wants us to do everything.
Okay.
So you can do a little bit of reading between the lines and make it all about you. And then it's not about her, but she may be more forthcoming. If nothing else, it kind of, I don't want to use the word forces, but prompts her to think about those things. Because if she's listening to you talk about your wants, needs, desires, then it will automatically start some thought processes for her.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else have any thoughts or experiences they'd like to share, or some pitfalls to avoid?
Beth, I had just had a comment. Somebody mentioned technology and deferred to that. One of the things that was helpful for me with my co-managers was we each had a shared calendar, so they could see what was on mine, for day-to-day appointments, things like that. So I honestly didn't have time to think about canceling my meetings for that day, or, didn't want to go there because I knew what was on my plate for that day. So they were easily able to go in and just like put it to another day, or take my, they were just often one-on-one meetings with staff, but able to move them easily for me, and I didn't have to worry about it. So that worked well because we all talked to each other, and understood that they were covering for me or I was covering for them at the time. So just a thought.
Yeah, that's a great setup to have. And I know that in Outlook, there are certain settings that you have to set so that certain individuals can see your meetings. So if this could happen at any time, make sure that so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so are able to gain access, and there may be others you want to make sure are not able to gain access. Just saying. So I'm all about the things that have to happen and the things that you want to make sure don't happen. So do a little bit of balance of those.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at time. So if you want to give us a last thought, Beth, and close it
Yep,
out.
just contact information here. And I welcome you to come to my site, caregivingpathways.com, for lots of free information, some of which is relevant to this particular discussion and others. And I think that's really it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Beth. We're going to stop for just a minute.